Hello and welcome to Everything You Wanted to Know About Catholic Liturgy But Were Afraid to Ask. My name is Bishop Christopher Coyne, and my answers and responses come out of my time as a professor of sacred liturgy within a seminary. So what's today's question? Now, I assume the ringing of the bells, we're talking about the ringing of the bells at Mass. And within my family, it's always was the source of controversy when I was a child because myself and my three brothers would fight whenever we'd serve Mass over who was going to ring the bells. So you'd have the two boys kneeling and we would make a decision beforehand, but it was always fun to be able to ring those bells at the appropriate time during Mass. At one point, the local priest got around this question of who should do it by having two sets of bells, so each of us got to ring it, which also led to the wonderful situation when you were by yourself, you'd have both hands ringing the bells at one time and really putting up a holy noise. The ringing of the bells in the celebration of the Mass right now is up to the individual parish or priest to decide when the bells are rung. It doesn't say in the present instruction that the bells have to be rung. So, you know, if you go from one parish to another, it's just kind of local custom. And you might say, well, wouldn't it make a lot more sense to have it one way or the other? I guess, but I also think local custom should be something that should be allowed as much as possible within the liturgy to a good way, so as to allow for local expression. But be that as it may, the bells first made their appearance pretty much in medieval times, and it developed because of the fact that many of the churches in the Western world were monastic churches. And so you would have the celebration of the Mass up in the apse area or the choir area, separate from the rest of the community, and often separated by a rather large and elaborate rood screen that was set up with various icons and pictures and statues of the saints. So much so that the people who would be on the other side of the screen, away from the monks and where the celebration of the Mass was taking place, could not see what was going on. They could, in a sense, kind of look maybe sideways and see, but they really couldn't keep pace into what was going on. And it was very important for them that they be able to recognize when the real presence of the Lord took place in the celebration of the Mass. So after the words of consecration, and the bread is now the host, when the priest holds up the host like this, bells will be rung so as to make sure that the people who couldn't see or maybe were doing their own devotions would pause to acknowledge the real Eucharistic presence of Jesus Christ in the Mass. And so it was first done for the host, and then very quickly on it followed the cup, so that you would see that behind the screen, the host would be raised, and then the cup would be raised, and the bells would be rung so that the people could stop and adore. Then you see other things begin to happen. For example, when the priest receives Eucharist himself in the old tradition, the bells would be rung, and oftentimes that was because he was receiving communion on behalf, in the place of those who were not able to because they hadn't gone to confession or were not in a proper state of grace or whatever it may be, hadn't kept the fast. And so it was important for them to acknowledge that. So the bells arose out of a very specific tradition that was very much connected with the architecture in the time, and they just kind of followed us down now. So where does that leave us with today? Today, if the bells are rung, it harkens back to those ancient times, but it's an opportunity for us to say, my Lord and my God, that Jesus Christ is truly present under the form of bread, under the appearance of bread and wine, and that we can adore and receive the Eucharist and be blessed by that. So they are blessed, they are bells that perhaps rouse us from just being often perhaps a little bit of a dream state. They are bells that acknowledge the real presence, and they are bells that fill us with joy that we're able to be a people who can participate in the Eucharist and not only celebrate, but also receive the great and beautiful body of Christ. My name is Bishop Christopher Coyne.